Beginning with the center block of Baskets and Blooms quilt sample, we're going to begin with the very center star block, the block that's in the middle. As you can see, I have everything labeled. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw the diagonal line on the back of the following squares, which will be your B squares. You only have to mark the yellow and the orange. These are going to be our 2 at a time half square triangles. And then we have our stitch and flip squares. They're H, and you need to draw the diagonal line on the back side of all of these. All right, so let's get set up. And the first thing we're going to work on is going to be our half square triangles. So you're going to grab your B's and we're going to make our half square triangles. To begin, we're going to join yellow to the red and the orange and the blue to make our half square triangles. I've already drawn the diagonal line, as I said before, on the back side of the yellow. So now my next step is I have my 1/4 inch foot with the fabric guide already on my machine, and I'm using a neutral thread, and I'm sewing with a 2.0 seam allowance. We're going to stitch a 1/4 inch away on both sides of the diagonal line. And if you've never done this before, what you do is you align the foot along the edge of the drawn line, and your needle will land a 1/4 inch away. All right, let's get these sewn. All right, so just to show you, I've sewn on one side of the drawn line. So here's my 1/4 inch, and now I will rotate the square and sew on this side, just like I did on this one. See, you can see that I have sewn on both sides. Now I will cut these apart on the drawn line, and when I press these, the line will disappear. Okay, now I'm going to cut apart on this drawn line, and now we have 2 half square triangles. There we go. Okay, our next step will be to press them and trim to size. You will trim according to the dimension in the pattern. As you can see, I've already trimmed this blue coral. We can call it orange if you'd like. Half square triangle. Now let's do this one. So what you're going to need is, you're going to need a 6.5 inch. You can use any creative grid ruler that you would like, or any ruler that has a diagonal line. You're going to place that diagonal line directly on the diagonal seam. Next, you're going to place the ruler, or once you place the ruler on the fabric, you want to double check that the fabric goes past the amount that you need so that you can trim off the excess. You can also pull it all the way down to the corner. Depending on how well you sewed it, you might just have to do 2 cuts, which would be the side and the top, or if you bring it up in here, you can trim side, top, and then you'll rotate it, which is the way I'm going to do it. So let's do this side and the top. And sorry, my arm hit the camera. And now we're going to take this and we're going to rotate this bottom corner. We're going to put it up here so that you can see that you still need to trim that side. Now we're going to place the ruler back on, and the size that you need is the size that you're going to put on the outer edge, the 2 that you just trimmed. Okay, so let's trim this excess off of here. And there you go. All right. So our next step, we're going to be making these 2 units right here. So we're going to take and put them just like this. So I've already drawn the line. So I'm going to place the B stitch and flip square, right sides matching, and there's a line drawn right here. And I'm going to stitch directly on that line. And then I'm going to trim a 1/4 inch away. So this will be gone. And then for this side, we're going to do the same thing so that they look like this. So they're coming together like this. So when we put that unit together, let me bring that back. See, it's here and here. So when we join that unit together, we'll trade positions. This one goes here, and this one's going to go down here. You'll stitch down and trim, and then you'll fold it in place and press, just like that. All right, so let's get these two sewn, and then we'll move on to the next section. So before I begin to sew these, I thought I'd offer you a quick tip on these. Instead of starting to sew, as in putting this end, this corner right here under your presser foot, start here and sew this way. That way your needle, if you don't have a single hole plate on your sewing machine for your needle plate, then the needle can't push this corner down into it, and it's what I call it eats it. So I start here. There's no way it can push this down into the needle hole in the needle plate. So start here, and I do the same thing with, now that I have sewn these, it's time to trim. So what we do is we take our ruler and we align the 1/4 inch line directly on your stitched line so that the edge of the ruler is a 1/4 inch away from that stitched line. And we trim. All right, let me press. And there you go. Now it's time to pull this together. We've already made our half square triangles for this section, so let's lay this block out. All right, so I've brought some more pieces in so we can make the corner of our larger block. So I'm just going to call this the corner block. So we're going to need our A rectangle, our C square, our half square triangle that matches this one. Notice how it's angled, and see the colors are up against the same colors are up against each other. And you're also going to need your C square from your light background fabric. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sew these two together first, and watch your pressing arrows, it's in the pattern. We're going to make a column, so once you sew these, you can then join this rectangle to here and then this rectangle to that. Once you do that, you're going to sew these two together and then join those over to this side, and make sure you're pressing along the way and follow the pressing arrows. All right, let me get mine together and I'll be right back. All right, so I'm ready to join these two units together, and notice there's only one seam to align right here. Easy peasy. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Got all 4 of the corners done. Now it's time to work on the next step. For our next step, we're going to need our light background square F. And then we're going to need 2 of our green floral and a blue and an orange / coral H squares. I already instructed you to draw a diagonal line on the back of each one of your H squares. So our next step is just to join them. So I have them placed where they are supposed to go. So you're going to have 2 green ones up here, and you're going to join them like this, one at a time. So we're going to take this one, I'll leave that one up here. Next one I'm going to join will be this one. We're going to work diagonally across from each other. So we're going to sew on that diagonal line, sew on the diagonal line, trim a 1/4 inch away, again trim a 1/4 inch away. You're trimming this part out here because we will flip these, flip as in turn them in place so that it's right sides together. After you press those, you cannot sew the next unit on without pressing them first, and then we will join this one and this one. All right, let's get these sewn. So I have both of these sewn. So you already saw the demonstration before on how to trim these. It's very easy. I'm taking the 1/4 inch line from my ruler and aligning it on the stitched line, and that way the edge of the ruler is a 1/4 inch away from that stitched line, and trim. Repeat the process on this side, and then we're going to press these in place. We will open and press. Just like that. All right, next step will be to join these, and make sure this green one goes over here and the blue one will go over here. All right, you're going to make 4 of these. So we will need them. There will be one on the top, one on either side, and one on the bottom. For our next step, we're going to be making the flying geese. There's 4 flying geese in this block. So we're going to have our E green triangle. Now remember, these are bias, and in the instructions I highlighted to prepare your fabric before you cut it with spray starch. So if you didn't do that, just be prepared. These are bias triangles because we have exposed the bias. That's a bias edge, that's a bias edge, that one is, and that one is. Now these outer edges and this outer edge, they are either the cross grain or the straighter grain, which will help the block itself stay square and not be wonky. All right, so we have our E triangle, and we need 2 J triangles for each flying geese. These are very easy to match. All we're going to do, we're going to take this tip here, and by the way, I gave you a little wiggle room with the J triangles, so there's trim up room, okay, but it's just a little. So we're going to go right sides together. You're going to line tip to tip, and you just sew a 1/4 inch, and that's all you do. Then you're going to flip it in place and press, and then you're going to join this side right here. All right, first one is sewn. I'm not going to trim anything yet. I'm going to go ahead and line this one up, match right sides together, and we're going to match that corner down to this corner. Actually, I should say triangle tip, and that's all you do. If you need to, place a pin in it to hold it together so it doesn't move on you, because you know, triangles seem to do what they want to do. Okay, and I will start sewing here and go across here. Now, here's your trick. As you're sewing your 1/4 inch seam allowance, as you get closer, your thread and your needle should land right in this intersection right here. If not, go back and check your 1/4 inch seam, how far you might have your needle over. Maybe you need to move the needle over to the left or to the right. All right, I'm showing you. See right there, that's where it's supposed to be. See how it comes across there? All right, I need to press this, and then I'm going to trim. So in order to trim this, I have my 1/4 inch line, seam line right here, or 1/4 inch from the ruler, right where these two cross each other. And I want to make sure that when I sew this flying geese to the next unit, I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, let's trim this. Put it back on there. Okay, and now I can't really see over here, but I'm assuming there's some excess. Yep, there was a little bit. I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to do the same thing. Of course, I have to have the ruler going in the right direction. There we go. I looked at it and went, something's wrong. There we go. Okay, so there's just a little bit past here, and I'm going to trim that off, and then this side over here. There. Not much to trim off at all, but that gave you just enough wiggle room, because sometimes bias triangles are a little, they just have a mind of their own. All right, so you're going to make 4 of these and trim them to the size according to the pattern. Time to set up for the next step. Our next step is very simple. We're going to join that flying geese unit to our square and a square block. Easy peasy, just go right sides together, and you're going to sew right across that seam, because you know you've got a 1/4 inch seam. All right, let's get this done. You have to make 4 of those, and then we're going to move on to the next step, which is the very center of the block, making the pinwheels. There you go. So I already have these two sewn together, and I'm pressing that seam open because there's these seams coming together, and that's just a lot of bulk. So now I'm going to join these two, and then you'll join this row to this row. And this is the very center, and everything is going to start coming together. And there we have our center. Now it's time to pull it all together. Lay out the units as shown. Sew units together, make two, one top row and one bottom row. Lay out the units for the middle row and sew those together. Don't forget to press. In our next section, we're going to pull all the rows together to make the quilt block. Follow the instructions. Lay out block rows as shown. Sew the middle row to the top row and sew the bottom row to the middle row. And now your blooming star quilt block is complete.